welcome to Overtime the podcast. Overtime is a podcast dedicated to all things watches, particularly in the micro-brand and affordable range. I'm Praka, and this is my co-host, Justin.
We are two watch enthusiasts based out of Perth, Western Australia. Join us as we discuss our thoughts on new releases, share our personal experiences, and offer our insights on building a collection.
Whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or just starting your journey, Overtime will keep you entertained with informative insights and casual conversations.
Let's get started.
So Justin, how you going, mate?
Hey man, I am fantastic for a Monday. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Busy weekend this weekend. Yeah, lots of family stuff and yes. So yeah, almost what do you call it? Looking forward to a bit more chilled week. Well, yeah, still gonna be busy, but you know how it is.
Yeah, February is the month of birthdays for my family. I think we've got 11 in the 28 or 29 days this year. I think it is. I think it's leap year.
Wow.
From memory.
It is like, yeah, your birthday's end of the month,
The day
right?
before, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, cool. Nice.
it wasn't a close call for me, but yeah, I think 29 days, 11 birthdays to get through. And then we had a slight break before the Easter holidays kick in, which is crazy that we even think about that at the moment.
Wow. Nice. It's actually my uncle's birthday today. So shout out to my uncle. It's 60th birthday. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah.
My mum's birthday yesterday.
Oh, all the birthdays. Yeah. My uncle wants a Pelagos LHD. So maybe one day, or maybe he got it for a 60th. Who knows? I'll find out next time. Well,
Yeah, very cool.
Well, I guess let's let's introduce our topic today. So we've got another guest for our listeners today, which is pretty awesome. And this is a brand new Australian micro brand, HZ Watches. So I'd like to welcome Matt Zillman from HZ Watches.
Thanks, Praka, and thanks, Justin, for having me on today. Fantastic to be here, and really looking forward and excited to talk about a bit more about my journey, my interest in sort of collecting watches, how I got here, as well as the brand and how I've sort of been going with our launch of the HZ.01.
Yeah, perfect. We are very excited to chat about it, that's for sure. Well, we like to kick off the episode with a customary wrist check. So I don't know if anyone has to guess, but what are you wearing today, Matt?
I actually thought I'd throw a bit of a curveball and change it up. And I don't have anything from the HZ01 lineup on my wrist today. So what I end up doing, sort of trying not to forget that I'm also a watch collector as well as a sort of micro brand founder. I rotate, one day I'll wear the HZ01 or, other sort of prototypes that I'm testing. And then, the next day I'll wear a watch out of my own collection. So today I did wear the Ming 17.09. So I'll flash it up.
Oh,
very cool.
nice.
On the screen. Beautiful watch. The story behind it is when I graduated uni, I purchased this watch for myself to sort of celebrate. What I love about it is just the little things, from the lugs to the polishing and just the lume as well is fantastic. So piece that I really love and it's a joy to wear.
Yeah, I've seen some loom shots on Instagram of that Ming, and it's absolutely very cool. Very cool to see. Nice.
It's cool to see so much lume on a dressier watch as well.
Yeah, for sure. What about yourself, Justin? What do you got on?
Well, I've got the privilege of wearing the HZ01 on loan to me from our guest, and it's been an absolute pleasure to throw in the collection throughout the last, I think it's a week now. It'll be a week tomorrow, I think, since I picked it up.
Yeah. And
having a new watch in the collection as of this week as well, it's definitely taken up most of my time, which I thought the Zodiac would at the minute. But yeah, like I was saying, it's a cool little dress/garter watch that's extremely comfortable. It's made working, like my return to work, a lot happier. That's for sure. It's a cool watch to wear in the collection. It fits my kind of style of work as well, and not looking forward to sending it back. What about you, Praka? What are you wearing today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a dressy piece as well. It's funny. We're all trying to, yeah. So this is my 70s Omega Geneve 16601 something. I don't know what the caliber is. It's hard to see. Sorry, I've got this massive light reflecting it. But yeah, it's this tiny little 35mm piece. Bought this new little suede sort of leather strap. It's really nice, actually. It goes quite well. I don't know if you can see. It's like a nice blue. It's a bit different, but yeah. Yeah, so I thought something dressy, and yes, the HZ01, I concur, Justin. There was I had a Had about a week as well with it, just under a week, and yes, it was awesome. Had a great time with it. But we'll definitely get into it when we
Yes, it
speak
will.
about it in this episode. So let's I guess let's get into the questions. So Matt, welcome to the podcast. We're super happy to have you. Before we sort of get into the nitty-gritty, could you just share a bit about your background, where you're from, and what really got you interested in watches?
Yeah, perfect. No, great question. So born and raised in Melbourne, sort of all my life. Probably started, collecting watches would have been, last year of high school, sort of first year of uni,
Mm,
first job, a bit of disposable income. Oh, what should I buy? I'll grab myself a watch. So from there, it sort of spiraled. The one of the first watches I bought was an old Seiko 5 with a 7S26 movement in it. Beautiful piece, the SNKL 41. And yeah, really enjoyed wearing it. And then I think about 6 months in, the movement just died on me. And I was like, oh, it's what am I going to do? Everyone was just like, oh, just buy a new one. Like they're that cheap. But I'd actually really grown to love that particular watch because it had been on, so many journeys and adventures with me. I was like, no, I want to fix this one up. So I started, doing a bit of research. I ordered a movement online and I performed my very own sort of first movement swap, and it went pretty well. I bought all the tools for it, and from then on, I was sort of hooked. And then from there, I started going a bit more into the world of Seiko. Being a uni student, my sort of buying style at that sort of time, and probably still now, was very much I'm buying for the value for money, and that was like bang on perfect Seiko's where I
Mm.
was at. So with that, at the time, and probably still is now, SKX very, very popular. So I started off in SKX mods and building
nice.
custom Seikos. So I built one for myself, and then I had a friend go, "Oh, actually, that's really nice. Can you build me one?" And then a friend of a friend was like, "Oh, can you actually build me one?" So it sort of evolved on its own, sort of through no planning or anything, but it evolved into this sort of small side hustle where I was just building custom Seikos for friends and friends of friends, and ended up starting up a little website where I was like, hey guys, if you've got custom Seiko requests, send them through. We'll order the parts, I'll build them, send it out to you. And I probably built between 70 to 100 over the course of a year and a half, and eventually ended up building a few and just building up a bit of stock. And then I was like, all right, let me try and move some of this stock. So I was in uni, maybe 10 or 20 of these custom SKXs that I'd built. And I started door knocking on all of these different watch stores and going, hey, would you like to consign some of my watches? I built these custom SKXs. And it just so happened to be that the very first store, the door I knocked onto, they were a watch store just on Collins Street inside the Block Arcade. And they were doing a bit more sort of high-end pieces, but I didn't know that because they had nothing in the shelves of the window at the time. They were just getting set up in their first week. And instead of being able to consign my watches with them, I actually walked out of there with a job as a watch salesman.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, no, it's been a very, very fun journey from collecting to working in the industry and being able to sort of work with watches every day, probably over the span of 2 years working in watch sales before then I graduated and decided to move on from retail and start to use my degree. But over that time, there was always a bit pulling me back, the collecting side, but also the designing aspects, which sort of led me down the path to build my first watch and bring us here today. So yeah.
Yeah,
That
that's a very cool story. We love a tinkering story into success. Very cool.
Yeah, and that's like I think another brand that we spoke to not long ago is the exact same thing, right? Started off with building custom SKXs and stuff that,
Hmm.
the Seiko, that gateway, it's a gateway, isn't it? Just keep pulls you in.
That's a
Oh,
rabbit hole, isn't
definitely.
it?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's cool. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I at one point I think I was just like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do my job anymore. I want to do something else. I want to do watches. Let me go get a job. I want to go and sell watches or do become a watchmaker or something like that. Yeah, I do have that intrusive thoughts in my head sometimes, but you never actually act on it. So it's cool to see that you've taken that plunge, you've taken that jump. So it's awesome.
Yeah, credit to yourself and anyone who has the ability to build those custom pieces, because I spent hours trying to just do a basic bezel change out and it drove me mad. So well done. All right, we might get stuck into some of the questions here. So your first release, the HZ01, so it stands out as a quartz titanium dressy daily wearer, which is a bit of a change of scenery from the usual microbrand trend of the NH35 movement and stainless steel dive cases with the exact same kind of measurements and specs as we're used to seeing. So what influenced you to go down the route of quartz and titanium for your first release?
Yeah, great question. And for me, when I first started this project, it didn't actually start with the intention of becoming a micro brand or, releasing this watch to the market. It was purely, as I was going through, the motions and the stages of collecting, I got to a stage where I probably had too many watches and still do have too many watches in the collection. But I would start to realize, I'd be out and about during the day. I'd throw on a watch early in the morning on my way to work, and I check the time throughout the day, and I'd realize, oh, hang on, the time's wrong. I haven't set this piece. I haven't wound it. Whilst I had a winder, 5 slot winder, 50 watches, the equation didn't didn't work out. So I started looking into quartz because I was like, oh, I actually want something that I can just grab and go and sort of take with me. Even if leave it in the glove box in the car, if I forget to pop a watch on in the morning, I can still throw it on, don't feel sort of naked throughout the day. I can still have a watch on. And so I started looking at all of the sort of quartz pieces out there, trying to find something that would fit nicely in the collection. The design I liked, but also the specs sort of held up. And I just couldn't really find too much out there. So like my first foray into quartz, I got a GS9F,
Very
one of
nice.
those beautiful, beautiful piece. But I was like, oh, I just can't see myself dailying it sort of at that stage. I was like, oh, it's such a nice piece. I'm not going to be wearing this out in the garden or, banging it around on a daily basis. So I was like, I'd love to get a titanium quartz watch just because I think there's a real synergy between the lightness of titanium as well as a quartz movement being lighter than any mechanical movement. So you get this great synergy that really can help create a really light and wearable piece. And that was sort of something that I was after, something that, you'd almost forget was on your wrist. So that's kind of what started me looking down this, quartz and titanium route. And then as for the design, I think it's quite easy for micro brands to chase the market, and which is, why we see so many NH35 dive watches as, the first ever watch for each brand. On Kickstarter, it's an NH35 diver for the most part. And I think it's quite easy to chase the market. But because I sort of came at this with an angle of going, oh, I really want to create something that I like for myself. It's sort of, that's what the HZ01 is. It was just a personal project to create something that would fit nicely in my collection. And, I had a few design principles and criteria that I sort of fleshed and teased out and tried to, hit all of those in creating it. So it really is, something that I created for myself. And I sort of realized, hey, this is actually, pretty cool. And I was getting good feedback from, friends and, other watch collectors that were like, hey, why are you building one? Can you build one for me? And I sort of thought, actually, maybe this is something that, I could bring out there to the market, and sort of super glad that I did.
Yeah, for sure. You've hit the nail on the head. I'm a big advocate for quartz. Myself, I like to be able to chuck something on and wear it, because I too have put something on and realized at 1 p.m. that my watch is saying 7 a.m. on a Tuesday and it's a Friday. But yeah, I think it's a very welcomed change, seeing something as a first release that isn't an H35 diver. So well done to yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the world of sports as well, gets a real unfair kick. So I think it's definitely a good way for a micro brand to come in with hey, this is, we're starting off the quartz, and we can grab enthusiasts with it, because I feel like enthusiasts sort of, put their nose up at quartz, as we're not talking about the high end quartz here, we're talking about this sort of, but it's really cool that you've chosen this route. And yeah, like the other day when I got it, looked at it, I was like, oh yep, it's set, time set, that was it. I didn't have to change it, nothing. Justin's still wearing it, all good.
Haven't touched it in terms of date and day. It's great. I think it really this watch really shows you how much wiggle room you have to play if you're gonna kind of explore the quartz route as well. And this is a lot different to anything you do see come out of a first release from not just Aussie micro brands, but around the world also. And it comes at a time of heavy saturation of dive watches being released non-stop. So it stands out even more.
For sure, for sure. All right, well, let's move on to the second question. So I thought I'd want to talk a little bit about your marketing strategy. Yeah, look, I would say the Australian microbrand scene is gaining some momentum, right? You've got names like Second Hour and Balcel and stuff that are, in coming out in biggish watch publications. It's cool to see. It's awesome. It's great. And, your startup has also been in some pretty big watch publications. And I was like, all right, this is cool. So was I guess your decision to go down that route, to launch a pre-sale, within your website as opposed to using a platform like Kickstarter or Indiegogo? Was that a deliberate choice?
Yeah, it was one I sort of tossed and turned about for a fair bit there. And, even in the lead up to the launch and, the days before, I still wasn't sure whether I'd made the right decision. So with Kickstarter, you do get a bit more, or from what I've seen anyways, you do get a bit more of that exposure to the market where, people sort of monitoring, oh, what's coming up, what's there available on Kickstarter, what's new, what might my next purchase be. But I think the decision to bypass Kickstarter was one that sort of, again, naturally sort of fell into where the real sort of strength behind the HZ.01 and the launch was just the support we received from the community. So whether it would have been on Facebook, on the forums, or Reddit, in the sort of r/microbrand watches, or even on Watch Crunch as well, it was all about sort of connecting with the community, being able to, speak directly with all of our, people who are interested in the watch. So with that, I sort of wanted to build out this connection with all of our sort of interested parties. And with that was that mailing list. So I think looking at Kickstarter, it was very much, you can build out this Kickstarter campaign and people can follow along the campaign and, they'll get sent a notification. But it was very much all done on sort of Kickstarter, but having ownership of, the website and the launch and, being able to connect with all of our customers, through the mailing list and really sort of put our message out there, about the watch, about, the launch and everything, I think was something that was important. So that was sort of one of the decisions behind it. The other decision comes down to the affordability sort of price point as well. So just looking into your Kickstarter fees versus your sort of launch fees outside of Kickstarter, it was, more affordable and we could offer a better price to our customers through going down the launch ourselves. And that was something that, it was important to me that the brand remains, and is accessible for all of our consumers. And the last one there, in terms of why we decided to launch ourselves. Sorry, I'm just going to take a quick sip of water.
No, go for it, mate.
You're a good guy, man. It does get like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, train of thought. Let me try, grab it back. Yep. So, and the last decision sort of that impacted, the last reason that sort of impacted our decision to go with our launch ourselves instead of Kickstarter was it was very all in. So with Kickstarter, I felt that, some of these campaigns or, if I did go down the route of a Kickstarter campaign, it might just be like, oh, if it gets funded, it gets funded, then I can think about next steps from there. But going down this, launch, fully funding the very first production run, regardless of getting any orders, even if we didn't sell any watches at launch, I still would have produced the full production run of 500. It was very
Awesome.
all in for me. It was like, no, I'm doing this. I'm, making that investment. I'm going all in. And because I was sort of going all into it, there's no, it's that lack of that safety net to think like, oh, if the campaign fails, it fails. I'm sort of lost too much. For me, it was like, no, I want that, almost the stress of, oh no, I've gone all in on this, and then, have that there. So, okay, that's helping me sort of drive this forward and build the brand.
Yeah. No, I think, you've done a great job at it. And, especially connecting with the community, connecting with, different watch, I guess, like, I've seen Just One More Watch, Jody, throwing a shout out to you and just yeah, AAWF and all these forums, all this support and you being there and having a chat with the people as well. I think it makes such a big difference having connection to the market, and in like Justin said before, it's such an oversaturated market, right? What makes you stand out, and these are the kind of things that do. Obviously, your design and everything else that we've already spoke about, like the actual specs and design and everything else is very cool and it's very different. But being that, and we always talk about this, is the beauty of micro brands is that you can talk to the person that's actually putting in the work into that watch. And, you're not only just getting the watch just for, brand prestige or whatever, but it's also just like, hey, this is someone's journey here and I can see that in front of me. And it's like a labor of love. And that's awesome. It's great to see.
Yeah, no, most definitely. You've hit the nail on the head there, and that's the real strength of micro brands, being able to connect on that personal level, even to our frequently asked questions page on our website. I was putting it together, and I thought, actually, if people have questions, rather than read them straight off the website, I'd like them to reach out to me and connect personally. So I spend an hour on the train in the morning answering emails, an hour on the train at night coming home answering emails, just from our frequently asked questions. I said, I'm actually not going to put any frequently asked questions up. If you have a question, drop your question.
Yeah.
I'll send you a personal email response and connect with our customers. And I think that's been a real strong point for us in being able to hear feedback from our customers straight away, being able to connect, hear what they want, as well as sort of understand a bit more about their collecting journey and their situation as well, and sort of provide recommendations. And sometimes I have to remind myself, oh no, you're running a brand, you're not just a watch collector as well. Talking to a watch collector, there's been a few emails where I've had people reach out in the frequently asked questions and say, hey, I've got this budget for a watch, looking for this and this. What do you think would be good? And instinctively I'm like, oh, you should check out this brand, and then I send it and I think, oh wait, that actually would have been a good good place to plug HZ watches. So, but no, it's been great just to being able to have all of these conversations and really connect with the community.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty well-known thing in the microbrand community, especially if you're in individual forums to do with a single brand. Brands that are pretty transparent about QC and the brand itself updates and in touch with the community are the ones that stand out and succeed in the long run, I think. And from what I've seen in AWF, like Praka said and whatnot, you get some good feedback, that's for sure. I think it's cool to wear a piece of someone's like manifestation into success. Like you said, you went all in on the thing, and it's a not do I die. It's probably a bit drastic, but you've got to succeed type thing. It's cool to be a part of that if you wear them on. Sweet. All right, so the HZ.01 showcases some pretty unique colors. Can you tell us about some of the inspirations behind these choices? For the listeners, burgundy, blue and green are the color choices, and to me they're pretty Aussie without being in your face Aussie whatsoever. But did Australia landscape come into play with making these decisions?
Yeah, great question. And being perfectly honest, no, it didn't really. In terms of the actual colors, I was there picking out all of these different colors, and I think I had color swatches for I think it started off as 64, and I had like almost a little knockout tournament between them, and I had them stuck out all on my desk, or some stages on the wall, and really just looking at the colors, I was like, okay, what can I sort of see on my wrist? What can sort of make this watch a bit fun, a bit more modern? Because it started off as a tuxedo dial where it was just a black and white watch, and I thought that's great. I want to a bit vintage inspired, but I want to also modernize the design a bit. And, the way to do that was through the color choices. So I sort of went, okay, well, if I were to wear a watch, what colors would I wear? Oh, blue. I think 60% of my watch collection is blue dials.
Yep.
I do really like green. So I was like, put green in there. And the burgundy did start off as a red. And then in sort of looking at the versatility side of the piece, I sort of went, the red is quite, a bit stronger than the burgundy, but the burgundy is a bit more versatile for everyday wear. So I just had all of these color swatches, no real sort of inspiration from anything really. I just sort of went, I think
Just like the
these colors
colors.
are nice. I think they're versatile. In terms of inspiration, the blue did start off. Well, the blue that did win was a blue that was inspired by blue that I did buy a really nice pair of Jordan 1s in
Oh,
armory
cool.
blue.
Nice.
And so that was sort of one of the colors that I sort of threw up there, and the blue that I ended up selecting was quite similar to that. So I guess if there was an inspiration for one of them, that might have been it. But yeah, nothing related to the Aussie landscape. But on that sort of point, I just like to quickly call out Phil and Murray for their Outback Elegy. They did a really, really lovely collaboration with Time and Tide, and I got to see it in the flesh. And it was a beautiful,
Cool.
beautiful brown dial that was modeled off the Australian Outback. So
Yeah.
if anyone out there is looking for a watch that is sort of, inspired by Australian landscape, that is one that I thought was done very well.
Yeah, sweet. I think brown and burgundy is a bit of an untapped market still. I feel like we're starting to see it poke through it more. But yeah, when this rocked up, brown's that funny color where you're not sure how it is gonna play out. But on this with the eccentric circles in the brown as well, and against the brown and red's not a color I would have thought in my head would work, but the red tip on the second's hand goes very well across that brown truck or whatever we're calling that. I'm terrible with part names and IDs.
Yeah. No, it definitely works well. And just I'm going back to the Jordan 1s, and I'm like, is it the Valerian blue Jordan 1?
I think
No.
it's the Armory blue or
Armory blue. Okay.
navy. Yeah, Armory navy. I'm not quite
Armory
sure on
navy.
the exact one. Yeah, I bought it and I
Okay.
went, oh, they're quite nice. So I
Nice.
picked them up, and yeah, I had them unworn sitting on a shelf when I was going through all of the colors, and I was like, oh, what colors? And I looked up and it was right there, and I was like, oh, let me find a color swatch that looks similar to that.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. Because I thought it was the Valerian blue. It's very close, and that was the one that I was looking for the Valerian blue, the lows, and for ages, and yeah, it was all sold out. But nice. I do like that armory as well. Sorry about that. I'll change back to shoes for a minute. It's good. Yeah, it's just time and like you said, that Time and Tide, Phil and Murray, an Aussie collection. There's been a couple actually. I actually saw I don't know if you guys heard of a brand called Speak Marin. It's
Yep.
pretty high end sort of watch, and they've done like an Australian exclusive. It's a green with koala on it, and I was like, wow. I mean, like you're looking at, not talking about smaller sort of. I mean, you're talking, yes, an independent brand, but still pretty high end stuff. And even what else have I seen recently? Well, I guess Time and Tide is just doing a lot of collaborations, right? With names on my tip of my tongue, Baltic as well, doing all sorts of cool stuff. So, hey, when's the Time and Tide HZ.01 coming?
Maybe one day, hopefully. But yeah, no, I did actually manage to put my name down for one of the Baltic Hermetiques
Oh, cool.
Time and Time collabs. So I'm looking forward to grabbing that one into the personal collection.
Fantastic.
This Ferdinand Murray is gorgeous too. I've not seen this. It's stunning.
Yeah,
Very nice.
it was such a nice style.
Yeah, very nice.
Cool. All right. Well, we've had a couple of really interesting, I guess, but serious questions. I thought we'll do something a little bit fun today. Let's do a fun question. So if you could send a HZ01 to anyone back, in history, right? A figure, celebrity, Holly, whatever, from the past, who would it be, and why do you think they would appreciate your watch?
Yeah, that's a great question. And sort of thinking back to maybe bit of fiction movie I was watching.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, I just got around to watching the new Indiana Jones, and I sort of noticed, there's some cool scenes in there with a watch and Archimedes. So I think, if I could send a watch back into history, maybe I'll send one out to Archimedes. Be cool. Thinking from a fictional standpoint, feature in a movie,
Yeah.
but also from a historical standpoint, he probably find it quite fascinating, the quartz movement, and take it apart, maybe have a look at it. So yeah, if I could pick one historical figure, the first one came to mind purely because of, that movie scene that just popped to mind, Indiana Jones. It would be send one back in time to Archimedes.
Yeah, that's an
That's
awesome answer.
very cool. I would not have pictured Archimedes, coming up in this conversation in this
Yeah.
podcast ever. But that is cool. I love it. I love it. And you know what? I think while we're talking the spirit of some fun, what about you, Justin? Who would you send this
Yeah,
to?
I don't think about this too. Now, like I get into my music. I always have. My parents always have music playing in the house because we live so far away. We never got TV reception, or we couldn't get Foxtel or internet. So it was just CDs and even vinyls for a long time when I was younger. And what popped into my head was Lemmy Kilmister or Meister from Motorhead. So he passed away in 2015 from memory, but he was this. He kind of it sounds a bit weird. He looked like a pirate in a way. He used to wear a big hat. He had a giant handlebar mustache and he was covered in leather and studs. He was a real rock and roll kind of metal guy. But he always had nothing high end or expensive in watch terms, but he always had something small with a black leather or some sort of aged leather on the wrist. And it kind of reminds me, I could see that being on his wrist. Kind of suits his vibe on a black strap, I think.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yourself.
Well, I was going down the whole fictional way as well as what Matt did. I was thinking, this would be awesome in like Mad Men, the TV show Mad Men.
Mm,
Yeah, like the Don Draper and that kind of, Roger Sterling, all those guys, they're always wearing like that tuxedo dolls. I don't know if you've seen that one of the characters wears a Tudor Oyster Prince tuxedo doll. And then, like sort of like that, I guess is really vintagey inspired. And whilst your watch is vintagey inspired, it's still very, it's got a lot of modern aspects to it as well. So I think, yeah, maybe one of those characters, not quite in the, not quite while they're working, but, maybe when they're doing a bit of gardening or maybe when they're just, hanging out at home, I reckon it would fit it quite well.
yeah, great answer.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to some, I guess, back to the watches.
Yeah, sweet. So I guess to round out the questions for today, what's in the future or in the pipeline for HZ? And obviously we're eagerly awaiting the HZ.01 to be out. What's next? Have you got another model coming out? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, great question. And it's super exciting, sort of one
Mm,
eye towards the future, one eye also on, making sure we, get the QC done right for the HZ01 and all the deliveries out on time. We've been a bit conservative with the sort of delivery estimates, so hopefully we can get them out slightly early, but we've given us a bit of time to, make sure we get the QC done. So I guess short term for me, it's heading over to the factory, performing the QC on every single individual piece myself, probably being a bit picky and pedantic, but that's, what the whole QC process is for.
yeah.
And then, yeah, probably over the past sort of 3 months, I started to realize, this first launch, could go quite well, and I might not have too much time to sort of turn around or think about, what's coming up next. And I did have some idea in mind when sort of designing the HZ01. I was like, if I had to do, other designs, what would I do? And I've got a big book of ideas, and being mindful of the very first design is quite easy to throw almost too much into a design and overcomplicate it, which was something I really tried to stay away from doing with the HZ01, sort of thinking, I want to do this and this and this, and you end up with a watch with way too much, a bit too busy and too much going on. So there's definitely things that I've liked, I would have liked to do, and I've sort of like pushed them down the track, like, don't worry, I can get to them later. So in terms of upcoming models, I've got prototypes being made for another additional 3 models, and drawings
Wow.
and designs for another sort of 3 models after that, with some really interesting and exciting collaborations that in the works as well. So the future is definitely exciting, and with the sort of successful launch that we've had, it's definitely sort of set the foundations to continue growing and continue getting the brand out there. So the all the sort of what we've made out of the launch is going towards maybe getting us over to America for the Wind Up Watch Fair,
Nice.
which
Cool.
will be super exciting. So still trying to sort of flesh out all the details for that, but also a lot of research and development in terms of the prototypes, and even some limited releases. So I'm sort of looking at the future collection. I want to build out what I've sort of termed now as the legacy collection. So watches that will be always available for purchase. That's our permanent collection. But then, similar to other brands, you've got your, special projects or your one-off limited editions. So within that, I have been, toying with a few different, limited runs, and one of them being grabbing some new old stock Quartz movements, and some of the old Hummer movements as well.
Oh,
One of the first Quartz watches I fell in love with was one of the F300 and Constellations. Beautiful watch. So yeah, I've been sort of scouring the web trying to find some new old stock movements that might be used in a limited run. So there's lots of exciting things to come in the pipeline, but the next sort of 3-5 years has sort of been mapped out, and then we just got to hopefully stick to plan, and through all of that continue doing what we do best, which is really being able to connect with the community.
yeah. That's first of all, that's a lot of information, and that's awesome that you've already got a 5-year, roadmap plan. I don't think I have a 5-day roadmap plan at the moment with some of my work, but no, I'm just joking. But seriously, 5-year road plan, that's awesome. It's great to hear. And it's super exciting to see that you're, reaching out to, I guess, players in America as well. Worn and Wound is, like, I think I've said this in the podcast many times, one of those publications where till this day, I still, all listen to them all the time. And it's so much, they're sort of really boosted up the micro brand space. So it's really cool that if you can get yourself over there, not only, be there for the meetup, but actually meeting all these other brand owners and meeting, I guess, yeah. That's like the micro brand grail for me, right? So, and yeah, to get to the wind up watch fair. So that's cool. That's really cool. You spoke about, 3 models, prototypes, and we have your I guess your theme, right? So far, it's the Quartz watches. That's what got you in. Are you planning to stick with Quartz watches? I did ask you a question on Instagram, I think, when we first started chatting, what about high beat? Sort of high accuracy quartz, or, that kind of stuff. Are you looking at that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's so many pathways we could go down, and for the time being, it's quite quartz focused. So whether that be exploring solar movements, or looking at mecha quartz as well. We might see a bit more of that in the immediate future. Then, as we start to build a bit more, and sort of gain a bit more reputation and sort of brand awareness within the community and watch world, high accuracy quartz is something that's definitely on the list. I get asked a lot of the time, oh, you're obviously focusing on quartz watches. If you take a look at the logo, it's very much inspired by a circuit board. Will you ever do an automatic or a hand wound or mechanical watch? Probably tease that there's no immediate plans for anything in the sort of legacy collection, but one of the collaborations that's sort of in the works is being able to bring an automatic watch into the lineup in a pretty fun way. So looking forward to being able to release that one when the time comes. That's going to be super exciting.
Awesome. And so that's not part of your 3 that's coming this bit future thing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Exciting. Just tease the listeners and everyone else out there. That's good.
Yeah, very cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, look, we've really come to the end of our questions here now. So we've come to the, I guess, part of the podcast where we discuss about something interesting that's happened to us over the week, whether it's watch related or not, or just something that we want to share. Matt, as I guess, is there anything interesting that you'd like to know?
Good question. In terms of watch related interesting things have been happening to me over the week, I've probably started looking at thinning down the watch collection. So I was like, made a list of everything, and got an Excel spreadsheet out, and I was like, okay, have to do a bit of a stock take here. It's getting a
Yes.
bit out of hand. And I, started with a plan to try and, cut down some of it. And then I ended up buying another. So we'll see
So
how the culling goes. But as for something sort of interesting that happened over the week, I did see a beautiful Longines sort of Anna Digi sort of tankard that was being sold, and my way of sort of being able to get the thrill of adding it to my collection, but not actually forking over the money, was to send the listing over to a good friend and say, hey, this is your style, you should grab it. And he ended up grabbing it. So that was something interesting and fun this week for me to sort of convince a friend to buy a watch.
I love it. I love it. I do that all the time. I mean, ask Justin the amount of watch. I'm like, hey man, check this out. This will look cool. Do you be like, oh, cool. I told you that we're not actually buying watches, this year. That's the plan. I was like, yeah, sorry, man. I just can't help it. And I'm an enabler.
I think I said this to Matt too. I was like, two mortgages on the go and whatnot, and
Yeah.
Praka's over here sending me just ad after ad after ad.
Yeah.
Just this will look good. This will look good on you.
Yeah.
But it is much appreciated.
I just, I'm just sharing the love. That's all. What about yourself, Justin?
Not watch related for me this week. Obviously with work and stuff, it's been a bit busy. I haven't spent a lot of time on Instagram and whatnot. But my young fella was watching some YouTube. He gets some time at the end of the day to watch something he wants to watch, and most of the time it's something Pokemon related, which is an absolute spin out as a near 30-year-old, because Pokemon was huge when I was a kid, and that was my life. And I didn't really know there was so many now.
Oh, yeah.
I thought there was, the only the two generations, I guess, back then when I used to play it. Anyway, he stumbled across a video of a girl who paints the cards. So she takes the character in the middle and paints these kind of realistic / cartoon scenes in the backgrounds, and makes wall art out of them, and then sells them as like a put together photos. You get like a card here, down, up, and kind of space them out to make some cool wall art, which I'm gonna grab one for my son for his birthday this year as well to hang up in his room. But her Instagram was called Nova Collects. There's some awesome stuff in there.
Right, you gotta have to send me
Very
that
talented
link.
people.
You're gonna have to send me that link because my
I
son
will.
is Pokemon crazy as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I was my eBay liked list, it's all just Pokemon cards, and I'm just like, I'd like to use this to look at watches too, but no, it's all eBay cards, Pokemon cards.
My son's not on the cards yet. He plays the Switch, and I think I
Yeah.
watched him the other day because it was too hot to go and play outside. It was the day before school started, and he spent, I'm not kidding, 3 hours catching at what looked like an olive in the corner next to a cliff and a piece of grass. And I was like, is it ever going to end? But it didn't. It was too hot to do anything else. So
Yep.
that was it for the day.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool, man.
So,
Cool.
what about yourself, Praka?
All right. Well, I've got something watch related. So, I think we spoke about this same project last year in the season 1 of the podcast, which is the Seiko Power Design project. So Seiko does this basically like a yearly thing where they get bunch of watchmakers, designers, all Seiko in-house, either Seiko, Grand Seiko, all the other brands. They all come together and they do various sort of one-off designs. So these aren't sold to the public. They just sort of design like a design competition, and you get to see some pretty cool stuff. And one that really stood out to me was called the Pandagraph. And I will put a link in the show notes for this. And basically, it is a literal panda dial chronograph. I'm trying to show it to you guys, but it's probably Can you see
Oh,
that?
I've seen this. I just didn't know it was called the Pandagraph.
Yeah, can you see that?
I can.
Yeah, and I saw that and I was like, oh my God, I love this. I absolutely love this. And it's cool because the designer, Kiyotaka Sakai, basically said he set out to design this true panda watch because so he had a panda chronograph. I'm not sure what panda chronograph it was, but I assume it's, like a Rolex or something. And it was like, oh, check out my panda chronograph to his son. And his son said, that's not a panda chronograph. That's just a watch. So he's like, you know what? I'll make a panda chronograph.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And then down the bottom, it's got the smile. You know how it says like, tachymeter or, it'll say like automatic or something down there. It says pandagraph instead of chronograph.
Yeah.
And then on the tachymeter, it's I think it's called Sasa meter, which translate to bamboo meter. So anyway, very cool. This is what Watches is about, I think. Just a bit of fun. So it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And every now and then when I flick through Instagram, I can't remember whose account it is, but someone's got a Timex that had a Secon collab with a penguin. My daughter
Yeah.
is crazy for that penguin watch. I'm just mad for it.
Yeah,
I
that thing was
thought
sold
about
out in a flash though. Okay.
exactly,
So
yeah.
yeah.
No, it's cool to see fun stuff come out. And I think just on that topic with the Seiko collaborative sort of thing, Notice does something similar, don't they? Notice do like a design
Design
lab
comp. Mm.
thing where you submit an online web form, whether you're a person or a company, and have a chance to come up with some sort of design. I think I was looking at their completely blacked out design, which is due for quarter one this year, I think it is.
Yeah.
That looks really, really cool. But it's cool to see people in touch with the community and doing something different.
Yeah. Very cool. Nice one. So yeah, your interesting collab isn't a pandagraph, is it? No.
No, but that was a very, very cool design. Yeah, I saw that scroll past it on Instagram, and I was like, yeah, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
Just having fun.
For sure, for sure. Awesome. All right. Well, look, before we sort of close out, we, want to thank you, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we just wanted to, yeah, would like you to, I guess, plug your socials or, your website and yeah, just let the people know what they need to know and where to find you.
Yeah, no, amazing. No, thanks, Praka and Justin, for having me on. It's been a pleasure to come on and chat watches, and I can chat watches all day. So if anyone out there wants to connect, you can jump onto our socials. It's HZ.watches on Instagram, or our website www.hzwatches.com. If you want to reach out, you can jump onto the contact us page. I check my sort of emails every morning and I go through them. But anyone in the watch community that would like to reach out, whether it be feedback or questions or even ideas for future designs, please you're very welcome to, and I'd love to connect with you in the community. So yeah, that's where you can find us, or you can also drop us a DM on Instagram, and yeah, looking forward to chatting.
Cool, cool. Well, so for all the listeners out there, we have, this episode is coming out after the pre-sale launch, well, pre-launch sale, sorry. But you still can order through the website, check it out. And yeah, there's some really cool designs, as we spoke about. And yeah, I think our listeners will really be in tune with it.
No, thank you. And I've also created a code just for overtime listeners here, which will bring the prices quite close back down to the launch prices as well. So the code I'll send through, but it will
Yeah.
give 20% off on all orders for the HZ.01 collection, and it's just HZX overtime 2024.
Awesome. That
Awesome.
is
Thanks,
so
mate.
cool. That is awesome. And yes, listeners, 20% off back down to the pre-sale price and, around there, or I'm guessing around 175, 180 or something. It's an absolute bargain, honestly, for what you're getting in this watch, the design, the specs, we've handled this now and it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, like I think we touched on it earlier in the show. It is super refreshing. In terms of my collection, like I'm very dive watch heavy these days. But yeah, very refreshing, very comfortable. And if you do any kind of field based work, I'd highly recommend it. Well, if there's
All right.
nothing else to add to that, we might wrap it up here. And all the best with the launch, Matt, and your endeavors in the future. And take care.
Perfect. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Praka, and hopefully we'll be back soon on maybe in a future season when we drop our next launch or next interesting collaboration. The future looks bright, and looking forward to growing the brand and seeing where it takes us.
For sure. Yeah. No, and we will, always have you back. And yeah, maybe we need to do some sort of Aussie brand collaboration podcast app. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Put you guys against each other. Nah, just kidding. All good. All right. Well, if nothing else, we'll wrap it up there then. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, fellas. Thank you for joining us on Overtime the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
You can find us on our Instagrams at Overtime the Podcast, at Kinda Average Watches, and at Horology Capture.
We appreciate your support and value your feedback. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please hit us up. We would love to hear from you.
Until next time.